So, hello Scott, thanks for being the second victim.
Yeah, it's very weird to be in front of a camera. I have to say that, it's very odd.
I know, I'm trying to get used to it myself. So, introduce yourself, who are you, what do you do?
You know what, it's really bizarre when someone asks me that question, because there's sort of like three pathways for what I do in my life. I'm a camera operator, I'm an editor, video producer. I also teach as well for a small part of the week in an FE college. And I also work for the BBC as well at a weekend in sports radio. So I've sort of got like three different things going on, and somehow I've managed over the past 12 years or so to sort of keep all three sort of going.
Juggling.
Yeah, it really is like that.
So let's start at the beginning then. So what made you decide to get into video?
Well, I've never really been into film as such, which is perhaps most people who work in this sector have a big passion for film. For me, it's always been about television. And when I was young and growing up, I'd always be watching sports, or I'd always be watching comedy or drama in particular, even soap opera. You know, I sort of watched all sorts of genre, but it was very much the medium of television that ignited my passion. And I always wanted to be a cameraman. And back in the 90s, when I was sort of growing up, live TV and sort of live multi-camera productions were dominant, and they were commonplace, from Saturday morning kids TV to early morning breakfast television to late night Saturday night television. It was all very much live, and even though there is that now, it doesn't seem to be as dominant in terms of the scheduling, and so for me that really ignited my passion. I always wanted to be a cameraman on The Big Breakfast. That was a big part of my life back there, just watching it, and I was watching it as a, you know, sort of someone who's like 10 or 11, 12 maybe. And maybe some of the content wasn't suitable, even though it was on at 7 o'clock in the morning before you used to go to school, and it was gripping stuff back then. But it was that sort of fun vibe. I just thought, you know what, it'd be absolutely superb to be part of a production team working towards something that was fun, and that's really what ignited my passion. And the camera work on The Big Breakfast, as you know, was just extraordinary at times.
Yeah, I remember we always chat about it, don't we, about The Big Breakfast, how much of a laugh it was, like in the mornings. It was so good. There's nothing like it now, is there?
No, there isn't. And that's quite sad in a way, because everything seems very formulaic in television nowadays. And I think it's kind of lost its way a little bit.
I think it's definitely gone more to like the phone-in type stuff, hasn't it? Where like they can make a bit of money. So basically it probably doesn't cost them anything to make the show, because they make it all back with, you know, phone charges for people voting for a specific, person. And I'll tell you what's awful. Sorry, sidetracked. That bloody Masked Singer. Have you seen it?
I have seen it.
I watched it and I was like, oh my God, they're stooping to new levels. Man, they're stooping to new levels. It is shocking.
Well, the thing is with that, and I have seen bits of it, I put it on for around about 20 minutes. I mean, I'm not really into that sort of reality, any type of show that involves dancing or singing or talent. That's not really my thing. But credit to them for trying something new, because that format, that sort of reality talent format, has become so stale in the past 20 years.
Been done to death, hasn't it, really?
Yeah, so maybe credit to them for trying something new. Is it going to be the next X Factor? Probably not. But it's not my thing. It's not my thing. But at least there's people out there with new ideas, and someone's had that idea and they've gone with it.
So what were your favourites from like those days, other than The Big Breakfast? Was it TFI Friday one?
Yeah, that was
That was quite a good one, wasn't it?
And again, I wasn't really in the target audience for that.
Yeah.
You know, it's very much sort of I don't know, 16 plus, and I was watching it as a sort of 8-year-old up to maybe the age of 13, but I just love that format and the whole multicam environment. And I've been fortunate enough to work on a few multicam jobs as such over the years, and just that team ethic that's required to produce something.
I think it's a spontaneity as well, because like that was what was good about Big Breakfast. Like stuff would happen that like it's sort of like Panto in a way. Stuff would happen that you weren't expecting, and like that was what was made it funny.
Yeah, you had to react to that, and it's all about, you know, most of it was unscripted. Although the Big Breakfast famously, they had their clipboards and they had their cues, but frankly they used to go off script quite often, and just some of the sketches that they used to get away with, and some of the sketches were quite close to the Ofcom broadcasting code. I'm sure they were told off about doing certain things.
Streaky bacon.
Favourites. Yeah, that's a particular favourite of mine. And it's just, I mean, you just don't get that on television nowadays, and that was so special about that era in particular. Yeah. But it was an era that ignited my passion to be a camera operator and sort of go down that line. I think heaven knows what I'd be doing now.
So is that why you decided to go to college, which is where we met, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because obviously school, when I was at school, they didn't really offer anything like media. So is that how, did they do that at your school, or did you have to be sort of forced to go to college because it was more diverse what they offered at college?
It was the opposite for me, really, in that sense. As in, at school, they were desperate to keep hold of me to do sixth form, and I just kept saying no. They were like, "Oh, you can do business, you can do you can do English, you can do whatever you like." But I was like, "No, I'm not interested. I want to do media." Yeah. And back then at my school, I mean, media studies was only really sort of coming in as an A level, an AS subject round about that time. It hadn't quite sort of spread in. You could probably do that now at my old school. You could probably study media quite easily, but back then it was sort of, it was just frowned upon. It wasn't really a subject that you could do until you went to university, or go to college and do an unconventional pathway to university by doing something vocational. So I chose to sort of abandon school at year 11. Almost, I'd say 80% of people went on to sixth form, and I sort of bucked that trend and went off to college with nobody else. It was a complete fresh start in that sense, as in I was studying my national diploma. You were a few years ahead, weren't you? You were doing your HND.
Yeah. What was the second year HND when you were doing first year national diploma?
I think so, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. But I mean, the positive thing about that for me is that when I did go on to university, it put me ahead of the rest, because if you'd have stayed and done A levels, even though that would, you know, there's merit there in having a specialist area in 3 subjects, 9 times out of 10 people starting uni didn't really have, they might have liked the idea of doing media, but they were quite far back, and I felt ahead of the game. So I think that put me from a confidence level, I was fairly confident in my abilities. I look back now and think, you know, you think you know everything, but you know very little.
Yeah. I think I definitely felt like that. I still know very little now, to be fair. So yeah, you can always learn more. But so yeah, you've got a bit of a love affair with the college. So that's probably, guess that segues quite nicely into you do a bit of teaching still, don't you?
Yeah, at the college where I was a student. So I went to college, went to university, and then I started doing work for Media Cove after I finished university as a freelancer, which was based within the college. And
so
then,
what did Media Cove offer to students and to the clients that they were making stuff for? Because I was part of that as well.
That's how we sort of
met properly, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a few years after. It gave an opportunity for up and coming freelancers and up and coming talent to, you know, put their skills to projects for commercial clients, and obviously the money that was generated from that was brought back into the college. So as a business model, it worked quite well for the college. It worked quite well for obviously giving opportunities to freelancers with very little experience. So it was a very good model for that, and that's something that doesn't exist anymore. So for me, it gave me a good opportunity to sort of kickstart my freelancing career as a camera operator, as an editor, as a producer. It enabled me to create my own business and sort of forge my own way into life as such. You look back and think, yeah, I knew very little back then, as we all did, I suppose. But you do look back fondly at I look back fondly at the Media Cove days. You know, the freedom we had to create stuff.
So that transition, like I remember when I first left uni, I was fortunate to like start working at Media Cove pretty much straight away. What was the transition like for you, like when you had actually finished uni? Were you still doing stuff for Media Cove then, and like how did you go from, I don't know, I guess, because I sort of had a few part-time jobs and then sort of like slowly stopped doing those when I got more work and things like that. So how was that transition like going from like student life into actually working? Did you find it difficult? Or?
It was all quite seamless actually. I mean, I was still living at home at the time, but it was all quite seamless because I applied to the BBC for a 3-month work placement, which started literally days after I would have finished my university course. And I was very lucky to get that. I was one of, I don't know how many people applied for that position, but I should imagine it was pretty popular. Even though it was an unpaid 3-month placement, it was perfect for me because it was, I'd started when I was a student working in student radio as a volunteer, and I did that for 4 years, and I wanted to try and continue that. So I applied for this placement scheme with the BBC, and that just fortunately started as university ended. So that was a very seamless transition.
And what was that focused on?
Well, that was focused on life as a journalist. I mean, I'm not a journalist, but life as a journalist, as a sports reporter for 3 months, and you got to work at the BBC. It was almost like the best gift that anyone could give me was that opportunity to work with people at the BBC. The BBC is now a big part of my life. And I'm very much an advocate for the BBC and what the BBC does and provides. So for me to get that opportunity, it was like the best job in the world, and it still is in some ways.
And what happened after the 3 months then?
Well, I was very fortunate because it was a 3-month unpaid placement, working with sport, and when that time was coming to an end, I'd connected with the team and was made very welcome by the team there. And fortunately, there was someone who was working on the team who didn't really like sport, and was just, they were doing that job. They wanted more time at home. Obviously, working with sport is unsociable hours on a Saturday every week, something that I was very used to in my student days. I gave every Saturday up for 4 years. Without any pay. It's not about money at all. It was about the enjoyment of learning that craft. They left and they sort of said, well, we need someone to fill that gap. Scott, we carry on and we'll pay you. And I was like, wow, this is great. Absolutely great. So it was very much being in the right place at the right time.
So was that Shropshire?
That's at BBC Radio Shropshire, yeah, and I'm still there now, 12 years on, yeah.
Cool. So what do you do at BBC Radio Shropshire now then?
Well, it's still being part of the sports team, but I've kind of spread my wings a little bit more. I occasionally commentate and summarise, which is great. They occasionally wheel me out to sub in when one of our commentary team can't do it, and that is great fun. It's been in the background producing material for broadcast, and the fascinating thing about that is the lifestyle of radio has changed dramatically in that time period. This was a time when I joined where it's before social media. Social media is a big part of output now, connecting audiences through converging platforms. It's not just about the radio anymore, it's about online as well. And I suppose the amazing thing about my work at the BBC, if I can call it amazing, is the fact that I can utilise my video skills now as a producer for a radio station, for online output. So it's all the mediums converging together, and that's something that wasn't perhaps visible at the time. It was very much about the radio, but my role has perhaps changed in that time. But I still work with people who were there when I started, and they were there before me. So it's very much a fixed team in place.
I remember we spoke before, isn't it? Like sports, like massively important, isn't it, to local radio? Because who listens to the radio other than for live sport or potentially older people? Like a lot of people have just got smartphones now and they can listen to the music they want when they want. And
yes.
Or talk-based radio is obviously probably still quite big, but.
Yeah, and I think you're right in terms of sport is a magnet, isn't it? It's a magnet. It attracts people at a set time on a Saturday afternoon. You know, if they follow a particular football team and they want to find out how they're getting on if they can't get to the match, or you get people who are at the match and are still listening to the radio. They're listening to the commentary as such. So it is a magnet, and I do think that sport plays a fundamental role in local radio in particular, because it does bring in audiences across the whole spectrum. You know, it's not just a set type of person who listens to sport. Everyone listens to sport, young and old. And I used to listen to sports commentaries when I was sort of 6 or 7. And I'll probably, if I'm still here when I'm 70, I'll still be doing the same, I'm sure. But yeah, so it does bring in people from all over the patch and beyond, of course. You know, all sorts of listeners if they're on holiday. You know, so it is that magnet. So I think sport plays a big part in radio, but my sort of role is, I don't know. I think my attributes are spread very wide, and I think that's an added bonus for the BBC, I think.
So, as well as the radio stuff, obviously you do video work and a bit of design work and stuff like that. You know, I guess what's your favourite part of that sort of work that you do? Because obviously we're on the road quite a lot and work together for every mate. So
yeah, I mean,
we were talking about workloads and stuff earlier as well.
Yeah.
It's really good to talk about.
Yeah,
we can touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, because I do, you know, I've got 3 sort of strands, and my week is taken up by doing 2 of them at a set time. You know, I fit my other work around that, which is a struggle at times, but with the support of a network of, you know, people like yourself and other people who I work with, it's manageable. I don't have to be, I'm in a fortunate position where if I am offered something that I can't do, I can offer it to somebody else, and I think that's a good thing. And it keeps you busy as well, maybe. But you know, I think the management of your schedule is so difficult at times, because, as you know, you can have patches where you don't have much on, and you can equally have patches where you're working 7 days a week for 3-4 months, and that can begin to take its toll. I think I've digressed a little bit from the original question.
The thing is, your 7 days a week is effectively 5 days a week, though, in a way, because you know you've got 2 days taken up already. So, like, in a way, you're sort of working a full-time job plus another 2 1-day jobs, which take you up to 7 days a week.
This is a discussion. That I have regularly with my wife.
Yeah.
Helen is so supportive about what I do, which is great, because as you say, most typical working weeks is a 5-day week, 2 days off, whether that be a weekend or not. Most people work to that pattern. But when you freelance, it's just there's no boundaries, and that can be quite dangerous.
Yeah.
Even because when you enjoy your work, you don't really see those boundaries, and that can be a problem, and it has been a problem in the past. And you'd think after 12 years I may have got into some kind of pattern and routine, but it's just never quite clicked.
But we were talking, weren't we, just before we came on camera, about sort of, you know, trying to manage the logistics of stuff. And I remember ages ago when you used to have a paper diary, and I was like trying to say, mate, just use your phone, because it's so much easier to cross stuff out. And you said it helped you a lot, but even still, you can't sometimes mitigate the fact that you'll get a call about doing a job, filming somewhere, and you've got something booked in the next day. And at the time when you accept the job, you don't necessarily think, oh, you don't know where it is, or the client might not even know where it is. And then before you know it, they say, oh yeah, you've got to go, you know, down to Southampton, and the next day you're
in Manchester.
So like, it's still hard to mitigate, isn't it?
It really is.
Maybe you can lead into that story we were talking about with the, you know, that job you did for the BBC.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you're quite right. I've been in a number of scenarios where I've been doing a job until sort of 1 a.m. in Norwich, and I've got to be in Liverpool the next day, and you know, you can't just click your fingers and you're in Liverpool all of a sudden. You know, Norwich in particular to Liverpool is not straightforward. You know, I think one thing in this job, we know motorways quite well.
You know motorways fairly well. I rely on my sat nav, man. You seem to know good routes.
I'm quite good. I know like how to avoid certain ways,
that.
and you know, I mean, the first time I ever drove to London for a job, I think I was about 3 hours late, and so you kind of learn.
I've got a similar story actually. I think I missed about 2 hours of what I needed to film the first time I went to London.
The level of anxiety as well when you're in the car and there's you know that the hazard lights are on the motorway sign saying there's an incident, and you think, how long is this going to take?
That's what I mean. Well, if it says it's going to take 2.5 hours to get to London and you leave with 2.5 hours to get to London,
you're going to be very late.
Yeah,
it can take you 2 hours to get across London.
That's what I did.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much you can learn, isn't there? Just from being on the road, from your favourite service station being Beaconsfield, still a personal favourite of mine.
It's the best, trust me.
It's pretty good. To just estimating how long you're going to need, and I still get that wrong drastically, but the opposite way. Sometimes I need to be at a venue, let's say in Newmarket, which is a good 2.5, maybe 3 hour drive from my house. And I'll leave really early and I'll still end up getting to the shoot venue about maybe an hour and a half before I need to.
It's got time in it.
But that perhaps plays on my anxieties of being late.
It's better than being late, isn't it?
I mean, the ultimate bonus is normally I just sort of put my head back and have like a half an hour kit, which is a little bit weird. But you know, you can have a little power nap and then you sort of like, let's do the job. So rather than arriving all stressed and late, you know, it puts you on the right foot, I suppose.
So talk to us about sort of like went off track there a bit, but talk to us about that BBC job in particular. Obviously, you don't need to go into detail about. We sort of explained about like the logistics of getting places, and obviously that happened on this day, and you're sort of a bit tired going into the shoot, but like. Obviously, it was one of your favourite projects.
Yeah, and it's bizarre, isn't it? Because you can sort of talk about mindset and sort of, you're doing a job that's really creative, really fun. But if you've been working really hard up to that point, all of a sudden anything that is deemed fun, exciting, creative, and exactly what you want to be doing and what you've worked your whole life to want to be doing, all of a sudden, like. The stress and the tiredness kicks in, and I remember on the morning of a shoot, I just didn't want to go. I just didn't want to do it. It's not that I didn't want to do it. I just didn't feel physically able to do it. It was such a bizarre feeling that you have in your stomach. You know, you've got knots in your stomach. You just think, I just haven't got the energy to do it. It was like an 1.5 hour drive as well. I'd throw that into the mix.
But weren't you doing something else on the evening as well, which probably played into it?
It was. I mean, to be honest, the actual job itself would have been fine, but I'd committed to doing 2 jobs on that day, so it meant leaving my house at sort of 5:30 in the morning and getting back at 2 a.m, which I think for anyone, you know, and that's complete madness. It's insanity, to be quite honest. But because as a freelancer, you don't have those boundaries, you don't have a boss, although Helen might argue that she's a boss. In some ways, like what my point is there is that you haven't got someone saying, well, that's just not possible, because in my eyes it was possible, and in the end it was possible. But at the end of that, and I did get through that day, and it was a great day, and we produced some really good work, and I was really proud of it. But you know, that feeling of when your alarm clock goes off and you're not feeling 100%, you're fatigued severely after doing a busy few months. It was very hard to sort of just find the strength to just do it and crack on with it. I mean, I was fine when I was there, you know. It's just one of those feelings that you have to deal with sometimes when you do run yourself into the ground from being too busy, and that's something that I've done perhaps too much lately, and it's something I'm aware of.
Yeah. It's interesting though, isn't it? Because like you say, you probably booked in that evening job like a long time ago, and then you get like a great opportunity, like you know, producing something for the BBC come up, and it's like, 1, financially turning it down, 2, it's a great opportunity for you, you know, just to maybe get your foot in the door to start doing more video stuff for them as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And then yeah, you sort of like either let one of them down and then they may never call you again.
Yeah.
Or you find someone to cover, and then it's like you can't really win, can you? Unless you go get through it.
Yeah, and just push
but
yourself
at the time,
to the
you
extreme.
don't feel like you're winning, do you?
No, you don't, and you're quite right. There's so many anxieties really that play on you as a freelancer. You know, everything that you've just mentioned there is a constant, from just making sure that you've got enough work coming up. You know, everyone has a dry spell. I think sometimes people don't perhaps sort of highlight that enough. You know, it's fine to have a dry spell. I mean, obviously, if you're constantly not doing much, that could be a problem, and would be a problem. But I think generally everyone likes to not pretend, but everyone likes to say, "Oh yeah, I'm really busy," and sometimes. It's fine to not be busy all the time. You've got to pace yourself. You can't be running at that sort of 100-meter sprint pace for a marathon. It's just not possible. Not possible.
So here's a good question. So how easy is it to say no?
It's quite hard, actually. It's very
hard, isn't it?
Because if it's technically possible,
yeah,
unless I have to be in two places at the same time, you know, that's obviously impossible. But if there's a way, you know, if the one location is, if I can be given a guarantee that, yeah, the job will wrap at a set time and it gives me enough time to get to the next venue, if it means not having a break or not eating, then I won't see a problem with that. I'll be like, well, yeah, I can physically get there. I can do the job. It's fine. But you do have to, especially when, you know, I feel like I am getting older now. So, you know, I don't think I can maintain that lifestyle, because it is very unhealthy, you know. And when you're traveling about, as you know, the food options can be limited. Finding time to eat, but then what's available, you know.
Yeah.
It
tastes nice.
We tend to end up at a certain restaurant on coming back from shoots, which we won't sort of go into. But it's not good, is it?
So obviously you do your radio for the BBC. You've done a bit of film work for the BBC, like news items and stuff.
Yeah,
you've been abroad with the BBC doing a few football spots, haven't you, for the Champions League?
Yeah. To be honest, like,
are they some of your favourites?
They are some of my favourite jobs, because it's very bizarre as well, because you've got someone who's shooting an item for Midlands Today, or, you know, news output, who is then actually the summariser on the game, and I just think that's very bizarre, to have that set up. Maybe it's been done before, I'm sure it has, but it's great for me, because the variety of that job is just vast, you know. It's some of the toughest jobs that I've perhaps ever done, because you're out shooting for 12 hours in the day. You get back to the hotel for 20 minutes, and then you've got to turn it around because you've got tight deadlines. So you're the editor. You can be on that for another sort of 6 hours quite easily. And then all of a sudden you've spent 20 hours working on a product from start to finish, and you have to do it all over again. It's crazy.
So when you're going out there, obviously if you're doing your commentary, you do a bit of research on the teams and things like that. Yeah. So how does it work for the video stuff? Do you have an idea of exactly what the script's going to be before you get there, or is it Nick Southall?
Yeah, I work with Nick. I have worked with Nick on a number of sort of trips abroad.
So do you have an idea of what you're going to record before you get there, or are you chatting about it on the plane on the way? Or?
We've mostly Nick is very good. He's an award-winning journalist. He is very, very good at what he does. So I'm very fortunate that I don't necessarily have to worry too much about that. There's a lot of trust between us, as in, he knows that I can concentrate on the visuals and collecting good sound. He can concentrate on the storytelling part, the arranging of talent, you know, finding football supporters in Macedonia. I don't know how he does it, but he just sort of plucks out talent out of thin air, it seems, through good research. So I don't necessarily have to worry about that. But I like to have an input in that and offer him advice and guidance on what's physically possible, what isn't, what's a good idea, what maybe isn't. And we work well to create something in a very short space of time. And I think for some people who aren't used to that quick turnaround, that would be very daunting and almost, put the fear of God into you, thinking, well, wow, we've literally got a blank canvas. We've got to create something really good, and we've got literally a day to do it, to turn it round, to get it out for TX. If you think about it too much, you can put yourself off doing it. But, if you've got the right ideas and you've got the right tools with you, which sometimes we haven't when we're abroad, we have to travel literally very light.
Yeah.
So it's disassembling an FS5 or whatever in a rucksack and taking literally a choice of 3 lenses. Everything's handheld, no sticks, which I prefer. I prefer that sort of that setup. It's hard, especially when you've got to edit. If you've got an editor with you, it'd be perfect, but there just isn't the budget to do that. So having someone who can do both is very advantageous, and if they can commentate as well, it's perfect.
BBC bog off in it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, that the BBC gets a lot of stick, but I tell you what, it's
you mean
they're economical,
which is is that a good thing?
Well, I don't know. It's great for me.
At the end of the day, like, I suppose all that matters is the content's good in the end. For them.
Yeah.
But
it's been some of my favourite jobs.
It gives you a mental breakdown on the way. Then,
we've been close before. I mean, one of the worst case scenarios was in Macedonia, and we created this lovely package. And we...
Where's your mic pack?
Sorry, my mic has just fallen off. We had to create this package.
Yeah.
And we'd done it, we'd exported it, and then we suddenly realised, well, how on earth are we going to get this to Birmingham?
Had you got good internet or anything?
We had Wi-Fi in the hotel.
Oh, okay.
But the Wi-Fi in the hotel was probably the equivalent to, I don't know, WAP back in the day. It was awful. It was like taking sort of half an hour to upload like 4 kilobytes rather. So it was a real problem, and we had to get this package out in half an hour for it to make the news at 1:30. Luckily though, we were staying near the stadium where we were broadcasting from on that evening, and we were like, let's get in the stadium. They're bound to have Wi-Fi there. Luckily they did. It was super fast Wi-Fi for a national stadium, and I've never seen a file upload so fast in all of my life, and it was the perfect timing.
So did you just have to go knock the door and ask them if you could go in and use it?
Pretty much, yeah. Luckily we had our passes and accreditation. We were like, look, can we go up to the commentary point and basically rinse your Wi-Fi? And
so was
like,
this
no problem.
just before the game was going to start?
It was on the day of the game,
okay.
yeah. So we'd been working a few days before, creating lots of numerous outputs for broadcast, and the most important one in the build-up of the game, we were struggling at one point to sort of get it where it needed to be, but fortunately we managed to sort of just get it across the line by using some free Wi-Fi at the stadium.
I guess it's all these little things though, isn't it? Like, something that you wouldn't think about. It's the last thing on your mind before you're going away, especially if there's just 2 here.
Yeah.
To do that, and if the stadium wasn't there, like, what would you have done?
Well, I don't know what we would have done, to be honest. We'd have probably
tethered your phones or something.
Well,
drove to somewhere where you could get 4G. And...
Yeah, I think we'd have. I'm sure we would have found some solution. But I mean, that's part of the job, isn't it? You're constantly
problem
troubleshooting.
Solving, yeah.
You're constantly troubleshooting, constantly problem solving, and that does sort of, with experience, you kind of know, oh well, next time we need to cover all the bases as such.
So, how have you over the years? How long have you been doing this now then?
Well, this is my 12th year. So, but I mean,
how over the years have you
as a professional?
How over the years have you sort of like grown your client base and managed to get new clients?
I think over the last 5-6 years or so, I've really sort of managed to do that well. And I think it's very difficult when you start and start off. You need to sort of get that trust in people that, they know that you're capable of managing a project or even just shooting on a project. So I think when that network becomes bedded down a little bit, it can grow, and you can sort of reap the benefits of that as time moves on. So I think I've been very fortunate over the last 12 years. I wouldn't say that I'm a great businessman. I don't want to be a businessman as such, but you kind of have to be. You've got to be savvy in certain circles. As a creative, it's like it's you're almost going off in different paths, aren't you? If you're very much focused about business, but I meet very few people who are very good and excellent at both.
Yeah,
both being a business owner and concentrating purely on that, and also being an excellent creative. It's a hybrid that I think just doesn't quite exist fully. But I've tried my best. That's all I've done. Really is especially splitting my time up per week per se. It doesn't give me that much time to grow my business, but I've almost found time to do it. I could very easily not find time, and I'm always a believer that if someone says, "Oh, I haven't got time to do that," you have got time. You're just not being efficient enough. And efficiency for me is something that I think I'm very good at. If I do say so myself, I think you have to be really efficient.
Yeah.
At what you do, especially when you're doing 3 different things. If I was just concentrating purely on my business, then perhaps I could have a more laid back approach. But because I want to fit in so much, because I enjoy doing it all, you do tend to find time where maybe others wouldn't. And maybe that's not a good thing all the time.
So like what, in terms of like your business, Seven Stripes, so like what in terms of like growth, are you quite happy where it is now? Like, because it's quite, there's like a glass ceiling, isn't there, for like freelancers in a way? Yeah. You can only do so much, there's only so much time.
Yes.
So like, have you got plans to make it bigger, or are you sort of quite happy where it is now? Or?
Well, you can smash through that glass ceiling, but you can only do that so many times, and before, there is only one of you, if you want to keep it at that level, and I'm very much happy to do so. Yeah. I've never been looking to expand my business more than beyond me and potentially, a few of the freelancers who I work with, your good self, lots of people who I could name. So I've always been quite happy to keep it at that level. And I'm still happy to do that. I'm not looking to expand and be something that I wouldn't be comfortable with. I'm very much happy to keep it sort of as it is. I don't know whether that's a good thing or not, but it's just something that I'm happy with, and ultimately that's...
I think ultimately you've just got to be happy doing your job, haven't you?
Yeah, and that's...
Like I think this, I think to myself, I'm probably never going to make loads of money if that's what it's about, but for me it's not just about that. I mean, obviously we need to live and we need to feed our family and we need all that crap, but I'd hate to feel like I'd grown a business and then I'm just managing people, because I'd hate that. I'd hate not to be shooting stuff, I'd hate not to be being creative, or like having to manage that thing of like, oh, I've employed someone new and they've done something wrong or they're not very good, and then you've got to try and like sort of babysit them a bit, and I'd hate to do that. I really would.
I would as well, and it's not something that I've had to do, because the way I've created my business is it's very much me and others when it needs to be. I can bring in people on projects.
Do you feel like that has a negative impact sometimes on the type of clients you get? Do you think that because I know some people, like, obviously not everyone's going to be bothered by it, and I think there is merit in, it's the same with me. If a client comes directly to me, there is merit in having a personal touch and getting potentially better service, having direct contact with somebody.
Yeah.
But do you feel like it limits you as well in terms of like some clients want to go into a nice flashy office, sit in meetings for a day and discuss everything? And
I think it does, yeah. I think it works on both ways.
Have you found that it's been a problem for you? Rather than just like talking hypothetically, have you actually ever experienced that, or have you always found it generally quite positive?
I've always personally found it quite positive, and I think that whole sort of perception of you've got a big office and you've got multiple people working for you. Obviously that exists and that's great, but I'd like to think I've never pretended to be a big agency with a big office and I've got lots of people working for me. When I work on a project with a client, it's always very transparent that it is purely me and others who are invited to work on that project as a freelancer. And I personally think that's the approach I want to have. If that puts clients off, then that's fine. You know, I'm happy with that in a certain respect, because I'm not going to change to be something that I'm not happy about being. So whether it puts off clients, I haven't really experienced that, I don't think. But you do have to, at the same time, try and make it a little bit more than just about you. You have to try, and I have stuck with my brand. Yeah. I could have easily have dissolved the brand and been just myself, which may be something that I might do. You know, I won't necessarily rule that out. But I think maybe having some kind of brand brings in a certain clientele, and certain clients I have worked with, I think they have worked with me because I've got that label. I call it a label. You know, I'm a sole trader at the end of the day, but this is my label. That's what I brand myself as, and not just me, but the people who I work with, because it can't just be about one person on a particular job. Yeah. So I think if I was just Scott Harris, I perhaps wouldn't have been able to work with some big conglomerate companies that I have worked with in the past sort of 3-4 years. But ultimately, I'm very transparent with them, and it very much is. I do everything in the business in that sense. You know, I do have to do everything. I've got those lots of attributes that necessarily I don't particularly want to have, but you've found yourself having to develop and nurture.
So obviously, as well as that, you do your teaching stuff. Just chat to us a bit about the students that you get, because again we were chatting about this yesterday or the day before. I find it really interesting because, like, even when I was at uni or college as well, you had so many people who did media because they thought it was like the easy option. Yeah. You know, and you end up getting like 3 or 4 in the year, which, you know, are like really good. Yeah. But then the rest of the time, it's like you sort of trying to, you know, encourage people to make an effort and do well. And I know it's something I found super frustrating when I was a student. And even when I taught briefly, you know, it was just like a bit soul destroying sometimes, trying to motivate people. And I just, at times, was just like, just don't bother coming. If you don't want to do it, just don't bother coming. I know we chat about this, and you've spoke about as well, like, I don't know how much detail you want to go into, so feel free not to answer it. But like, I know you spoke about like the way that like certain places are funded now, and it's just a bit backward in terms of.
Yeah, I mean, I could go into lots of detail about this, you know, but I mean, ultimately, I suppose that's my opening line with students. You know, if I was going to be, I can be a little bit cynical and be sarcastic, and the students enjoy that. They really do. Some of them do. Obviously, there's all types of students, and maybe some don't particularly like that approach. But 99 times out of 100, they find it quite funny how sarcastic I can be with them. And
so what's the first thing you say then?
Well, I'll be like, "Why are you here?"
Yeah.
Why are you
like
here?
Before they've even done anything bad?
Pretty much. This is like the opening day. It's like, why are you here?
Yeah. No, it's a good question though, isn't it?
Well, it is a good question, and I'm kind of just being a little bit, you know, sort of awkward maybe. I can be very awkward as a lecturer. But what I'm trying to do with people who, you know, they've just left school. Yeah. The students who I teach, they've just left school. Some of them. I do teach high level students as well, and sometimes I ask them the same question. But what I want them to do, and this is something that I feel quite passionate about in terms, because I love working with young people, and especially if they want to work in media and giving them that helping hand. I think, you know, that's really what I want them to do. I want them to be the best that they can be, and even at that level, you know, coming out of school. They've been in a system for approaching 10, 11 years, where it's very formulaic. They have a bell at the end of each session that they have, and their classes are around about 40 minutes now, and by the time you've opened a book or logged on, it's time to log off. It's very different at college. It's a different lifestyle. So I try to understand where they've come from and perhaps try and enlighten them as to where they could be. You know, and their time at college is very small if you think about it in terms of their life. But the key learnings of what they can pick up in that time can really put you on good stead, and can ultimately, if you don't engage with it, you're going to fall by the wayside. So it's just all about giving opportunities and, forgiving mistakes as well, because 16-year-olds, there's a lot of pressure on young people to make decisions, as there was for us, from choosing your options to choosing whether you stay on and do A levels, or so many decisions you have to make at an age where I don't feel everyone in particular can make those decisions.
I agree though, because like in a way, although I've ended up in video or film, it wasn't necessarily, I wasn't laser focused on, that's what I want to do. It was like I was into my music and my DJing and stuff, and then media was sort of like, did a bit of radio, which interested me, and then, so I sort of did find my way. So like,
people do though,
I guess
they do eventually.
it just comes down to, and I'm sure I could have been a better student at times, but a lot of the time it's just down to attitude, isn't it?
It is. It's down to attitude, and I think it's down to sort of what they've experienced. I'm a firm believer that even when we're sat here today, we are who we are as a result of what we've done in the previous how many days we've been on this earth, and it shapes you as a person as you mature. And I think when you're a 16-year-old walking into college, you are the person who you were at school, but I tell you what, almost every student, and this is a good thing, every student when they leave college leaves a completely different person in such a short space of time. 2 years. Well, I say 2 years. It's actually really about a year and a half if you exclude holidays as well. So just over a year contact time with them. They're ready to take the next step. And there's lots of students now. I mean, I've been doing it for 12 years. In fact, some of the students who have walked in this year were being born as I started my college journey when I was a student. So that's a little bit scary.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Knowing that they were being born when we were at college, say, all those years ago. But my point is that they walk away different people, but college is a stepping stone. And I want them to be able to go on to make life decisions confidently, whether that be to go on to university, but have some kind of dream, have some kind of aspiration, of some end goal, because there's so many students and young people today, and I think it's more of a problem with sort of late millennials. We're sort of early millennials, but late millennials, and sort of moving into what will be Gen Alpha, in sort of 5-10 years time, when you've got people who were born in the 2010s coming through and ready to start work. They will have a completely different outlook, an alien concept of life that we just maybe won't connect with fully. And that's quite scary, I think.
What makes you feel like they'll have a different outlook? Because I know, I've got experience with my own kids in a way, and everything's immediate. They want everything now. It's like, you try and explain to my daughter that she can't watch something like instantly. It's like,
well,
I know that's like going off on a bit of a tangent, but it is that thing of like, everything's now, like everything's quick. It's like, pick it up, put it down, next thing, next thing. We were probably sort of similar in a way.
I don't know. I think
it's definitely been accelerated.
It's definitely accelerated over the past sort of 20, 30 years or so. But I think we were children of the 80s. Mid to late 80s, and I think we're perhaps the last generation that can fully remember engaging with an analog society, if we bring it into our profession, whereas your Gen Alphas are going to be fully engaged digital natives, whereas we weren't fully digital immigrants. We didn't have to learn from scratch. We were sort of born at the right time, I think, in terms of how technology developed at such a rapid pace. We were part of the teenager who thought the mini disc was going to be the next big thing, and it was for about a year, and then the iPod
got loads in there.
Was we've experienced it all, haven't we? Tape, CD, mini disc, digital.
You'll have to grab one. I'll show Gen Alpha.
Which drawer?
I think it's that one. There's
this one?
Yeah, that one. There's absolutely loads.
Right on cue. There's about 20... Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Something to tidy up later.
Sorry, I'm probably going off on a tangent. This is what was called a mini disc, Gen Alpha. This is what you used to put in a player. Actually, the player's just here, look. This is the player.
There you go, right on cue. We didn't even know we were going to talk about this.
And you put that in there, and believe it or not, sorry, I can't even see me. Believe it or not, you had to choose which disc you'd take with you. You couldn't just listen to anything all the time.
I'll tell you what, how frustrating. I mean, that was the future, kids. For about a year, maybe 2.
No, it was longer than that.
Was it?
Yeah, I had quite a good few years out of these.
I was still on tape for many years.
Still works. Anyway, but that's dead tech that you no longer see anymore. These are actually better than CDs.
Technically speaking,
they were a lot better.
Yeah,
you couldn't break them.
Yeah, very robust.
You could record on them.
Yeah.
That was good.
I'll tell you what though, it was so frustrating with your mini disc recorder attempting to name a track. It used to take you about 20 minutes.
I used to be really anal about it. We're all going off on a tangent now. I used to be really anal about it and, like you say, name the whole disc, every track, everything.
And on my particular player, you couldn't go back. So as you cycle through the characters of the alphabet, if you pressed it an extra character, if you wanted the letter Z, and you were trigger happy, because it didn't quite always click when you clicked it, you'd have to go around all the way again through uppercase, lowercase numbers, all sorts of characters. It was a nightmare. Yeah. You haven't really missed out.
I remember. I used to listen to this while we were still at college. I used to take this because I remember being.
Yeah.
I remember talking to media technician Colin Massey. Colin, if you watch this,
hiya, Carl.
I love you dearly. You helped me out a lot at college, so thank you. But I remember being in the office with Colin, chatting about MP3 players, and I remember having this in my pocket with my coat, and I had about another 2 discs. So I had like 3 albums with me, one inside here, and I was like, why do you need more than 3 albums at the same time? Like, I just chose these ones to come out to today, so you just catch the bus and that. How wrong was I? It's so good having a phone now where you can just access anything you want. The amount of times we go out in the car and we're like, oh yeah, play this tune, it's like, just find it,
stream it.
Yeah.
It's
so good. But there you go.
Yeah, and I think so from our generation point of view, we're perhaps you sort of early millennial is perhaps the last generation to have experienced fully engaging with physical media. Perhaps minidisc might make a comeback all of a sudden. Highly unlikely, but my point is that your Gen Alphas now, they're going to have a completely different mindset and an advanced mindset in terms of creating what we do at a much earlier age. They'll have a stronger understanding. It's much easier to make a film, for example. The closest thing I had to a camera when I was growing up was a pair of binoculars. In terms of just that, I just didn't have a camera. Now, you can get a smartphone fairly cheaply. You can make a film on it if you really want to. I didn't have that. So I think the opportunities to excel in media has obviously never been more apparent. I think that's only going to get better. There's probably, in your house at the moment, there's probably about, if you've got 4 or 5 mobile phones, you've got 4 or 5 cameras, do a multicam show. You could do that, I'm not sure how many people would, but it's technically much easier now to be able to create something. But I mean, having said that, I remember when I was 7, because I was always listening to the radio and wanting to be on the radio. At the age of 7, in the summer holidays, me and my sister would get 2 ghetto blasters that would record to tape and almost put them back to side to side, and we'd play radio stations. Then we'd have tapes playing the tracks. She'd change the tape and cue the next one up whilst I used to speak. And that was at the age of 7. So, we were really creative back then with what we had. And I just think that maybe a Gen Alphas won't necessarily need to be that creative. It'll all be there ready for them. And sometimes that's not necessarily a good thing. But we'll see. But it's a challenge. Going back to teaching, which was the original point, I've had to change my teaching style. Not drastically, but to a certain degree to cope with just different learning styles. The sort of verbal style of talking and people listening is not necessarily the best way of learning. There's other learning styles there that are much more suited. You mix it up a little bit more nowadays. And when I first started, I thought, that's the best learning style for me, but I'm not learning. I'm the one delivering content. I need to make that accessible in the best possible way to the group I'm teaching with, and they're going to have different learning styles. So you have to accommodate that. So I've noticed a big change in student attitudes over the last 12 years. And I'm sure that will continue to evolve as we progress through. How long I'll remain teaching for, I don't know. If I'm still at the age of 50 teaching, I'll be surprised. But, it's very much that dead end in that sense. But the sense of achievement you get when you do see the progression of a student. They've walked in for their level 3 diploma, and they've left and gone on to university, and then they've gone on and they're doing a master's in PR. And you think, well, you're part of their journey. You've put them in good stead. You've tried to help them find what it is they're passionate about. And it's a question that I often ask: is like, how ideally would you like to make a living? Because that's something I think that isn't necessarily asked directly in school.
When I was at college making my first lot of stuff, to get people to see it, you had to get them to sit down and watch a DVD.
Well, you know what? You're right. Yeah.
It's bizarre how much it's like online videos exploded in the last 10 years, and it's only getting more and more every day. Like I watch YouTube and subscribe to people on YouTube all the time, and it's like, these people are like bigger than the film stars. Like, it's crazy.
It is a little bit nuts, and as you say, when we started out, because we started out pretty much at the same time. You were ahead of me, really.
We were probably on like the cusp of before it went solid state, weren't we? Really, well, like the last of the digital tape generation. I remember people I went to university with. They were doing their dissertations on the future of tapeless. And the industry was very much perhaps 100% tape, even in 2007, 2008. It was very expensive to be shooting on card back then, and having the at a high end level. I'm talking about. They were. It's funny though, isn't it? How broadcast tends to be
so slow.
TV, like it tends to be like the last one to change. Yeah. I mean, look at 4K. Like 4K sets have been out for, getting on for 7-8 years, I bet.
You only have to look at HD. And it hasn't rolled out in the regions from the BBC perspective. Crazy, isn't it? And it's just, and it's obviously the expense of it. Technology has been developing over the past 20 years at a phenomenal rate, perhaps more so than the previous 20 and the previous 20 before that. I think we're coming out of that period now. I think it's flatlined. We've reached that optimum, and it's perhaps falling off a little bit in terms of new technology.
I think broadcast TV will eventually go, because you can't deliver all the new picture technology via the things they've got now. The boxes need to be updated, whereas streaming online, you upload your file in Dolby Atmos or Dolby Vision and all that, which it's the standard whatever it's
there's that restriction, isn't there?
Yeah, whenever it's finished to, if you set supports it plays it like that. You know what I mean? It's like, I think there's like, it's just moved on, hasn't it? It's not going to be the same.
It won't be, and I think that you could talk about well, is there a future of linear television? And you kind of think, apart from big events.
But even still, stream those.
Yeah,
like Amazon are streaming the football now.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be there in 10, 15 years. I think traditional TV will have gone.
Which I think will be a shame, but we do have to move on with the times. The technology available now is phenomenal, and you think back to when we were growing up. I remember the launch of Channel 5. You had 4 channels, then all of a sudden you had 5. If you're lucky enough at home to cable and Sky, it was great. You could watch anything you like. You felt that you could watch anything that you liked whenever, but you still perhaps had to put the video plus number in and type it in, and then pray to the gods that it recorded. The amount of times I used to record the Football League Extra programme, which was on at like 3 a.m. on a Tuesday night, just to see the goals from my football team, and I had to learn how to program the video. And I'm only 32, so I'm talking as if this was in the dinosaur era. which from a technological point of view, the early 90s perhaps still was. But we've come so far, and I think we've still got a long way to go. And as you say, linear television, will there be a role for it?
I was trying to think when he was just talking to me about it.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging.
Live TV like The Masked Singer.
Yeah, let's talk about that again.
Let's not.
But great show.
Voting shows like that, they are reliant on you watching it at that time and casting your vote within that time period, aren't they? So that's not going to work on streaming.
No,
really.
It's not.
Unless, it was streamed at a certain time and then you're reliant on people clicking onto it at that time. Which I guess is the same in a way.
Yeah, and I think we're still hanging on to that. In all fairness
though, there's no... I'm looking at it as in, the Netflix thing of you've got a list of programs and you click on...
Yeah.
There's nothing to say that you don't have a normal TV guide which streams all day, every day anyway.
Yeah, which is effectively what the BBC's doing.
It's like a channel. It's like a channel that constantly streams.
Yeah.
But instead of coming over your aerial or, through the satellite or through your cable, it's just coming over your phone line. That's probably the way it'll go, isn't it?
I don't think it'll be too dissimilar to how it is now. I mean, whether there will
It'll just be delivered differently.
Yeah, it will be delivered differently. But you look at BBC output, and it's all available instantly to watch on a number of different platforms, through your telly, through your iPad. You can join a program and restart it. It's a particular habit that I have on a commercial network. If something's on at 9 o'clock, I'll start watching it at 20 past 9, so I can skip through the ads and still finish at 10.
So you're the dying ad revenue.
It's I'm just adding to the problem.
On the same though.
But if it's there, I'm going to do it.
You're going to do it.
But I mean, I still like to watch if programs are scheduled to go out at a set time on ITV. I can put it on series links. So if I'm doing something else, then I'm not going to miss it. I can catch up. But I think it's perhaps my upbringing of being that sort of. Being a 90s child that makes me think, I want to watch it as it goes out. Will Gen Alpha have that same approach? That they won't, probably because they've always had it on demand. So they'll be like, oh no, I can watch it whenever I like. I don't have to be sort of told when to watch something unless it's a live event or the Masked Singer where they can vote to see who it is.
Yeah, shouldn't mention that again. Let's not mention it again.
Wasn't Teddy Sheringham one of them? See, the problem with that show, from what I saw, there was no big reveal, and I was like, just tell me who it is.
I just saw it and I was like, nah, this has gone too far now. This is just scraping the barrel.
Maybe it'll come good. Who knows? But
No, the format, mate. It's just the format's just terrible. Anyway, I was going to say something else. Then I've just totally lost my train of thought. What were you talking about just before then?
We were talking about technology. We were talking about how that is undoubtedly going to change. But I think from a camera perspective...
that was it. I was going to say, the good thing... Sorry, go on. Go into your camera thing is probably a lot more interesting than what I was going to say.
Well, I was just going to say, from a camera perspective, as you say, in terms of the restrictions of technology, you've got 4K, you've got 8K now, and you just think we've reached a point where, to be quite honest, if you're watching something on your mobile, if it's 8K or 4K, you're not really going to tell the difference. No. So perhaps, we have reached that optimum.
It's like all the high dynamic range stuff and that. It's like the boxes ain't going to support it. Like your box you've got now isn't going to support it. Whereas if, your TV, like new TVs will support that. But if your box doesn't support it, the link in the chain's missing, so it's not going to carry through to your set. So it's like, I don't know, it just seems like it's holding back technology. Like the current thing of broadcast is not going to move with the speed of
and
all
it never
the new
has.
camera and display tech and all that.
It never has.
The thing is though, it's only been, think about it, it's only been since Blu-ray was introduced that we actually saw a real difference in TV had been the same for years. You've got better sensors, you've got better colour, you got colour come in, you've got clearer image, but the actual format of what was it, 576 by
720 by 576 was standard depth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was around 50 years.
yeah, I mean, if you look at, and this is normally highlighted.
60 years maybe, and then since HD, it's gone HD 4K, 8K. Like, do you know what I mean? It's almost like now we're in that era of Gen Alpha.
Yeah.
Where everything's...
I think that's right, by the way. I don't know too much about it.
I don't even know what it means, to be fair. But sounds cool. But now you've got that era of like, you know, everything's disposable. Technology's disposable. It's like planned obsolescence thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, the next thing's out, the next thing's out, the next thing's out, and then everyone wants it. Like feeding the consumer, you know what I mean?
Well, product life cycles are much shorter as well, aren't they?
Exactly, that's what I mean. So it's almost like accelerating...
Yeah.
They're trying to accelerate everything through just because they need something else to sell you to please the shareholders, you know what I mean?
I think you're dead right. Obviously, product life cycles are much shorter, which is good in a way because it means that technology can accelerate at a faster pace.
Yeah.
Because, you know, once upon a time there were days where you'd buy a telly and that'd be you sorted for 20 years.
Yeah. I had my last telly 10 years.
My current television is 10 years old.
I didn't need to get rid of it.
No, I don't necessarily need to get rid of this one. I mean, if I wanted 4K, I would have to. But the point is, and I think this sort of stems back right to what we do in our work, you know, society is moving at a much faster pace. We are doing so much more than any previous generation. We are doing tasks much quicker. Project delivery deadlines are much shorter. And we're getting faster and faster at being more efficient. Technology is exactly the same. But what highlights it for me is that sort of era from, you know, HD introduced 2006 with BBC anyway, with the BBC HD channel. It's always highlighted at like World Cup football tournaments where they show you previous tournaments, and you've got that era from like 1974 to 1990 where the picture quality is exactly the same. You get to sort of 92, 96, still very similar. And then that period from 96 maybe to 2000 up until 2010, all of a sudden, it's like, wow, it's cinematic. What happened in that period of time? Well, the technology just was able to take over. And, you know, we were held back so long by the analog switch off. Once that happened in 2012, it's just enabled us to progress much faster with the new technology, which has obviously made things much, much better.
But again, coming back to like the broadcasting, you only got a limited, from what I know, you know, I'm not an expert on this, but you've only got a limited amount of bandwidth, haven't you? So they're struggling to fit any more, I think through the aerial anyway, they're struggling to fit any more HD content on the bandwidth.
Through digital terrestrial,
and like so I think you get now, like, because SD looks like turd. Like, I think they must have lowered the bitrate so much on some of the SD because it's like, it looks absolutely dreadful.
And it's not true HD either.
And you're going on, I'm thinking about the SD stuff.
Oh right.
So sorry if I said HD, but
no, you did say SD.
Some of the SD channels look appallingly bad now, like really bad.
It's because they are. In terms of...
And the thing is, you're watching that, you know, a lot of money spent on the productions, and you go on YouTube and you watch a 4K guy who's got his own little GH5 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And he's knocking out stuff that's like 10 times better than... it's hard to see a future for it, in my opinion, for a lot of stuff that's on the telly. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I do agree with you. I think there's so many challenges for broadcasters. Traditional linear broadcasters, that they've got their work cut out to keep audiences engaged, and you know, people watching linear television is just on that downward spiral, and will continue to do that. I think one thing that I do with my students is I've always asked them, how do they absorb media content? And when I first started teaching, it would probably be, you know, they'd produce a pie chart of whether they would watch what we call linear television, or whether they'd watch it online through a computer, whether they'd watch it through a tablet. Certainly when iPads became apparent, that was then an option. And how many people watched content on their phones whilst they're on the move? And I'll tell you what now, if you was to do that survey with 16-year-olds, linear television would perhaps be at maybe 0 to maybe 10%.
Mate, I'm the same though, mate. Honestly, I watch my phone more than I watch my TV, 100%.
Yeah. I think we
Like
all
I'm
do.
just like bite-sized consuming content all day, every day. Like, and I know it's a bad habit, but it's just hard to break out of it.
It is.
But yeah, is there anything we missed out? Because I feel like
probably
we've
lots.
Sort of,
you know, I mean,
is there anything interesting you want to say though?
I don't
I keep
know.
coming back to like, I don't know. I keep coming back to the student bit at the end of both my last things, so I have to try and break out of that because there's only so much you can hear. But like, what would you say now to like someone who's finishing your course? What next bit of advice would you give them?
I'd say that there are always opportunities out there, even if you think that there aren't opportunities. There always are, and you sometimes have to put in a bit of effort, not be paid. I mean, the amount of work that I did when I was a student, I spent 4 years at student radio not getting paid a penny because I really enjoyed what I wanted to do and I really wanted to do it, and that put me in good stead to move on and work at the BBC. That was a big part of how I got that placement, I think. But also in my other work, you know, I would work for free. And I think perhaps if I was to be critical of Gen Alpha or sort of the late millennials, is that maybe there isn't that desire to work for free nowadays, and maybe there's other reasons for that. Maybe there's other reasons, as in, you know, as a society, we are cash dependent. Society can be a little bit unfair.
That's true.
Maybe more so than it was when we were at the end of a 10-year Labour government. Without getting too political, but I think obviously dependent on your background, money is obviously a big part of everyone's being, and I think maybe some people can't afford to work for free. I was very fortunate that my mum and dad, they would always support me in terms of putting a roof over my head until I was ready to leave, so I didn't feel that pressure. But I'm also aware that not everyone has that luxury, so me coming on here and saying, well, you've got to work for free for 4 years, that's not necessarily the right way. It can certainly help.
That's not like 5 days a week, though.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
It's more like a hobby that you're doing while you're studying, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think if you were to
doing extracurricular stuff.
Yes, doing extracurricular activities. I think whilst you're a student, it gives you that time to do that.
Oh yeah, 100. Actually, yeah, 100%. I think.
So I think you'd find it difficult if you were to leave college, and if you wanted to, you know, if you were getting a job, you'd find it very difficult to sort of segment your life to accommodate you know, learning a new profession. It's very, very difficult, not to say it's impossible, but I think the benefit of staying in education gives you that time to be able to work for free. You don't have those financial issues. You can, you know, with a student loan, you can be supported, you can support yourself. So it gives you that time to maybe learn a craft and sort of provide opportunities for when you're no longer a student. It makes that step up, that stepping stone will just appear from the efforts you've put in whilst you've been a student. So it buys you time. I think that's my point, if you were to stay on and go off to university. Plus obviously it gives you that added skill set, and the attributes you can collect along the way will be second to none. I look back fondly at my university and college time of my life in terms of what I learned. I mean, I probably learned perhaps only 10% of what I know now, but at the time it was what I needed. It was at the level that I was at, and it did enable me to then, you know, go on further. And I'm still learning today, James, obviously. You know, I don't know everything. I really, you know, I know very little in my mind. I don't have a monopoly on knowledge. But I think if you're aware of that, and you're always aware of self-developing, and I always ask myself, as long as I'm not getting any worse at my job, I'll be all right. And as long as I'm getting better, and you look back and you think, wow, I did that 2 years ago, that was not as good as I remember it. And then you know that you've got better. And I think even at a young age as a student, you can be thinking like that. But to be quite honest, I still think like that now. And I think that's perhaps, I don't know, there's many right and wrong ways, isn't there? But I think if you're constantly looking at yourself and just making sure that you are improving, then you'll get there eventually. We're all on different journeys, aren't we? We've all got different aspirations of what we want to do. You know, our aspirations are very different, but we do sync quite closely. yeah, I'm rambling on now. Stop me.
I think we'll end it there because it's been quite a long one. Thanks, mate.
Pleasure.
Thanks for being number 2.
I feel like Buzz Aldrin. He was second on the moon, wasn't he?
Sorry, mate.
I think he was.
You're the hero that'll never be remembered.
Well, thank you. I think there's a compliment in there somewhere. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Can you give us some links to your work? Can we put them in the thing below?
Yeah. Why not?
I'll do them again. I didn't say before, I'm going to try and do these every couple of weeks, so hit the subscribe button if you want to hear more of us rambling on. Thanks very much.